Thanks very much. It's a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to have spent the day at what's a very interesting show. I seem to have struck the moment when the rain's actually stopped, but hopefully those of you who have got wet or need to dry off will spend a few minutes with me. What I'd like to start by doing is introducing you to Becca. This is Becca. As you can see, she's a farm manager on a large dairy outfit in west of Scotland at the moment. 2 years ago, she was the second in command of a warship. And I want to talk to you about what might seem incredible to you, that with no prior cattle experience, here she is running a large dairy farm and completely got the confidence of the owners of that farm. She was inspired to go into this line of work when she was getting ready to leave the Navy by going on an experience day. And some of you may relate to this, I certainly don't, but she fell in love with cattle. And there she is now pursuing her passion. I'm going to show you the one wordy, boring slide that's in this presentation, just to show you how you might get from leading in the military sense to leading, managing, running, organising, whatever you want to call it, in agriculture. And so what I've done here is just taken her LinkedIn profile from her last job in the Navy, on the left hand, with her permission, her last job in the Navy on the left-hand side, and just pulled out what that means on the right-hand side. And as you can see, she was the second in command of a warship. I'd say that's senior management. It's a relatively small warship, 45 crew, and that's because she was a relatively junior officer when she left. She was in her late 20s when she left the Navy. She was planning all the training for that crew on behalf of the captain and running that training with the experts in the particular training aspects who were obviously doing the delivery of it on board ship or when they were in harbour, when they were not actually deployed. She was managing all the financial accounts on that ship, whether that's the Ministry of Defence's money, your and my money, taxpayer money, which obviously has to be very carefully accounted for, or some of the private funds. So there might have been run ashore funds, and she was running all of those accounts. She was responsible for all the health and safety on that ship, and she was the risk advisor to the captain and responsible for all the compliance with all the external inspection regimes that go on. She was responsible for managing contractors, not for writing the contracts, that's done centrally in the Ministry of Defence, but when contractors came to repair things or to deliver food or oil or whatever it was, she was responsible for managing those contractors and, of course, all the induction and safety, etc., that goes on with having those people come onto the ship. She was responsible for all the logistics. She would have had an assistant logistics officer on there, but all the supplies, so all the provisioning, all the bunkering, everything else that was required for that ship, she was responsible for making sure that happened. And finally, she was responsible for the physical and the cyber security of that ship. That is a heck of a lot of responsibility for one individual, and it's perfectly normal for a junior officer in many of our armed forces. And so I hope, without having to labour the point, you can see that that's a heck of a lot of transferable skills that can come into any business, including ours. There are lots of examples like Becca, and I've taken together some of the transferable values and made them into mnemonic. You might recognise what the mnemonic is. Why have I done that? Because I use this with audiences like this, but also military audiences as well, and we all live on mnemonics. Every test we've ever studied for has a mnemonic, and actually, you might relate to this or you may choose not to, but deep down, we're all fairly simple souls, and we like to be helped to how to remember things. And this one helps in a lot of ways. And I do say to people I support and coach, if you can come up with a story that relates to one of each of these letters, you go to an interview or you're writing a letter, then you'll probably do okay. Formable's the only one I've really sort of tortured to get into the mnemonic, and it just means trainable. And of course, what you mean with service people is they're used to changing jobs at least every 2 years in their service lives. And so they're used to turning up and being expected to deliver. So they learn quickly and they study before they turn up. And that's one of the reasons why service personnel are very good at starting off their second career, because they study for it. They're also very adaptable when it comes to a new challenge on a farm or in an agriculture or land-based related business, a challenge they've not seen before. They're very good at adapting to get over that challenge, or to find out about it, or to go and ask for help and see how they can get around that particular problem. Unlike some people you may be employing or have tried to employ and are no longer employing, they're reliable. And if you say you've got to turn up at 8 o'clock, then they'll be there before 8 o'clock to start. And if they're not going to be there at 8 o'clock, they will have the courtesy to tell you that and why they're not going to be there and when you can expect to see them. And more importantly, and just as importantly, they'll tend to try and turn up with the right kit. Unlike me, in fact, who's completely letting myself down, who read the weather forecast, but it didn't tell me quite how badly it was going to rain. But at least I'm not wearing the dress that yesterday I was planning to wear. So, but I'm still here, despite the weather. They're meticulous. In the services, we call this attention to detail, and I don't think I need to say anything more about that. But, if something's got to be done, it'll be done correctly. And if there's some reason why they can't do it, as I say again, said before, they'll mention it and ask the question. Energetic and robust, I think we can draw our own conclusions about. And I think this idea of selfless is a bit of a double-edged sword. A lot of service people don't get jobs they go for because they're so used to expressing themselves in terms of the team. And I think that's a really positive thing. But the team did this, we did that. And people say, well, what did you do? And a service person really struggles to say, well, actually, the reason this was successful is because I was brilliant. It's not really what we do. But they want to be part of a team. They're used to being part of a team. In exchange for all of this, they want to be well led. They want fair, robust leadership. They want to be told what they can and cannot do, told what the goal is, told what we call the left and right of arc, where are the boundaries, and then they want to be left to get on with it with just the right amount of support. So you get all of this as long as you can offer a bit of leadership. For a service person, my analysis of how they approach, how they leave the forces is through these 3 stages. And it's not till they've been through these 3 stages, I would say they've resettled and established themselves in their second career. And I think this process takes about 5 years. The career seeker bit should happen before the individual's left the armed forces. This is when they know they're going to leave the armed forces, either because they're reaching the end of their contracted period of service or because for family reasons, personal reasons, it's just time to do something different. It may be, of course, for a medical reason, but that really is, despite what the press will tell you, a minority. 3.4% of service leavers each year leave under a medical reasons. 3.4%. A higher proportion then do later develop some service-related medical injuries, but again, it's somewhere around the 12% mark. So the vast majority of service leavers are mentally and physically healthy and looking to make a contribution. And as taxpayers, we should employ them and get them to make that contribution because we've all paid to train them. Okay, so let's employ them and get our money back. Career seekers need to work out what industry they're going to go into. Okay, and they don't know because they were interested in the Army or the Air Force or the Navy from about the age of 7. Just like you knew that you were going to take over the farm or you knew that you weren't going to go anywhere near it at about the same age, maybe slightly older. But they've had an identity in their head about being a guardsman and marching up and down the square or whatever it is since they were kids. And by definition, although some of you may have had that dream as well and aren't doing that now, by definition, they're the ones who succeeded in making their childhood dream come true. So their only identity is that military identity. So changing that to something else is really difficult, and some people never do. They're always a former soldier or whatever it is. But most people, with a bit of support, with some ideas, with a good network, will find out. There's lots of other interesting things out there to do. So in the career seeker stage, and this is a picture of a signaller, don't know where, somewhere between the wars, they are looking for what might be the industry I might go into, what might my skills translate to, what might the culture fit, what might I enjoy doing, Where are my mates? Where are people I get on with? And in order to find that stuff out, they need to go and experience it. And we call that getting insight days. And there's a lot of companies out there that offer insight days. Come and spend a day, 20 or so military folk who are looking at leaving, come and spend a day in my company and see whether you like it. And I work with companies to set up that sort of experience, those sort of insight days, so that individuals can have that opportunity. And then on social media, they need to follow professional leaders. If you're an influencer, please make sure you tag Ruralink to start, and I'll get the word out there. But those are the sort of people that career seekers need to start following. And then when they've had a bit of experience, they'll start to narrow it down to 2 or 3 areas that they might be able to work in. And that's what I call them a career developer. And they now start to identify, or at least publicly start to identify as, I am going to be this. Not a former soldier looking for a job, but I'm now an aspirant, whatever it is. Change your LinkedIn profile, change whatever it is, start when you talk to people saying, I'm trying to break into spraying. I really want to spend my life spraying. That's what I want to do. Yeah, I've spent 20 years, in the armed forces, but now I'm a crop sprayer. They've got to try and change the way they present themselves and then get work experience so that when they go for a job, they've actually got some work experience. Because as an employer, it's a huge risk. You're not going to employ someone who doesn't have a clue what they're doing. But perhaps you can give someone some work experience. You might like them, and you might then offer them a job. They come back in 6 months' time. You might not, and that's fine. But if you can give someone some work experience, when they then go to seek a job, they actually turn up in the right kit, they know what they're talking about, they're confident around the machinery and around the environment, and then they stand a much greater chance of getting that job. And that helps them network into the sector, and they can also, of course, then start to develop a sector-specific CV. And then the third stage of this pathway is the gateway job. That's that first job. And that gateway job is the one where the employer is actually relying on all that latent experience that the military individual's got. The currency of a military career is leadership at every level, from day one. The currency of a military career is leadership. Sure, there's lots of technical ability and trade in there, but the currency is leadership, and that comes with cultural awareness, the ability to get on with all manner of people, the ability to stand up in front of a room of people and talk to them, the ability to sit down quietly with an individual and coach them. All those soft skills, as well as management, organisation, reliability, and all those things I had up on the farmer's mnemonic. That gateway job, that first job, if it's a good fit, relies on all of those latent transferable skills, and then a smaller percentage of, if you've got all that cultural fit, surely then you can teach the 20% of what the sector is. And that's exactly why Becca is up on here again. Because Becca decided she wanted to work with cattle. I was contacted by someone who said, I think I need some military people for something. And we've got this farm that's had real trouble trying to find a new farm manager. They've tried to grow one, and the guy's just not cutting it. They've advertised in New Zealand, and they've got a couple of bites. And then, it was the start of thinking about COVID, and it was all getting very difficult. And I said, well, Becca really wants to work with cattle. She's a fantastic manager. Why don't you have her up on the farm for a week? 1 week. Please have her up on the farm for a week. No obligation, no money, no nothing. Please let her sleep in your worst caravan. And on day 4, they offered her a job. Not as a farm manager, but they offered her a job on really bad money because they could see that there was something about her. The guys related to her. She could get stuff done. She was understanding how the business worked. 4 days on the farm, and they offered her a job. She's been there just under 2 years now. She's now the manager. She hasn't even done 2 years' worth of whatever you do for 2 years with dairy cows. She hasn't done it for 2 years yet. But the owner's still on farm, but he's not on farm as much as he used to be. And she is the manager, which I think is pretty amazing. But actually, that just shows the calibre of people you're getting to. A young slip of a lass who's lost weight since she's been on the farm, and she's running that place, which is a pretty amazing story. That's not the only story. Why am I here? Well, as you can see, I This is my identity till a few years ago. The one of me lying down in a tent, that's the Iraq War. The one of me, I don't know what I'm eating there, but in front of the flags, that's the day of Prince William and Princess Catherine's wedding. We celebrated that in style. The garden down on the bottom right is Lashkar in Afghanistan. I used to write a blog about the garden there. That's pretty much my only horticultural background, except for the fact, which isn't on there, is that I grew up on an English vineyard. So that's the real hook. That's the real hook. Used to love sailing, and the reason I put the sailing up on that is that when I was an officer in the army, I was an intelligence officer, and as a junior officer I was very much responsible for training and doing things with soldiers, and then I got a little bit more senior and I had to do that through other people, and I missed dealing with soldiers, but I found that when I took people sailing, I could put 7 people on a boat, and within 3 days they'd have pretty much learnt how to sail well enough for me to sit downstairs and pretend to read my book whilst they did it, and that was really cool, and that's where I get a buzz out of it. I get a real, there you go. They get a real buzz out of teaching people stuff. But all the way through, what I've found myself getting to is that bit on the right where I'm outside, and my relationship to the armed forces now is I'm very proud to be a silver signatory of the Armed Forces Covenant with my business, Ruralink. And my identity now is not as an army officer, it's about a contractor in the land-based sector. So just a couple of other examples of people who successfully moved from the armed forces into the land-based sector. Top left, this is a field day I ran for a company called AgriCarbon that you may have heard of, that are mechanising the sampling of soil for carbon content. That's one of their pieces of equipment on the slide, and the people who are watching are applying for a job, and they're at a field trials day. Funnily enough, military people are given a 4x4 like that with a hydraulic arm on it, and they act around it safely, and they can be expected to turn up on time, do 100 samples a day from exactly where they're supposed to be done, and do it day after day, and find it a thoroughly rewarding job. And we've successfully placed several people with AgriCarbon in that way. Very happy. This photo was taken in Cumbria on an extremely cold day. Top right is a hop farm. It's not from the particular hop farm I'm going to talk about, but the hop farm in Kent was looking for someone, as a long-term succession plan, and the individual was doing his agricultural year at the Royal Agricultural University, was looking for a role with his young family, no experience other than a degree, 10 years in the army, went down there, and they took him on a year's trial, and he's now running the place. About 4 years in now, he's now running the place. At the bottom, the woman leading that class there, a woman called Tess, who now works with me. She's a former army educator. And funnily enough, it's with her that I've generated Ruralink training. Some of you got some flyers around. We've generated a course called the Rural Facilitator, and we're now bringing people in to run events and training and projects, mostly in the conservation sector, but with organisations like FWAG and the Wildlife Trusts. And we're training up people so that when we're using technology and all the wonderful things that are changing in agricultural and the wider land-based sector, we're providing some of the people skills, because we've realised that that's why people are asking us to get involved, because we bring people skills. So we're offering that to others. So Tess has taken what she's learned as an army educator. She's continuing her professional education now, but is working to deliver this type of training. So a few considerations just to really close with. If you're in the business where you can offer someone who's leaving the forces some work experience, please do. I realise it'll cost you a small amount of bother in terms of health and safety chit, and I realise it'll cost you a little bit of bother in that you will have to train them. But unlike some other people you may have had in your business, you'll only have to tell them once, and I guarantee they'll then get on with it, and they'll ask rather than make it up. So it's not as bad as taking on different work experience. And as I say, as a taxpayer, it makes sense. please have a look at, with your seasonal roles, actually make the effort to go looking for military people who are looking for work experience for your seasonal roles. I know you have difficulty filling them. Well, I've got people ring me up and say, how do I get experience? Well, if I can tell them, I tell them to go lambing. I tell them to go to grain stores, take on military folk for 4 months, 4 weeks a year. If there are roles like that, we can go round and round and get round on them again, then that's really helpful, and it helps you out, and it helps people get that experience they need to then put on their CV and then get into the sector. Team leadership roles, they don't need to really have some experience. Classic example, a large company that you'll all be able to name, involved in artificial insemination of cattle. Lots of very introverted people doing all the farm visits. Not many of them are suitable for promotion to the team leadership role. But funny enough, if you can manage a remote team anywhere else, you can manage 40 people with their own vehicles and long gloves. We found that team leadership role actually works just fine. And they might have to put a glove on once or twice just to know what the hell they're talking about. But actually, that's not the job, is it? The job is managing the people, and they're good at managing the people. So those sort of roles that really don't require technical expertise are really good places to get good managers of people in there. And then take your leaf out of some of these examples I've given you and just have a think about the cultural and the people aspects and the training that's gone into military folks. Just think, with a little bit of effort, can't you be really growing someone who could be really, really superb for your business? Thanks very much for listening, and happy to take questions.
Thank you, Fiona. Thank you, Fiona Galbraith. A round of applause. Lovely. From Ruralink.